I'll introduce myself, Deanna Crofts-Pelayo, Assistant Director, Crisis Communications at Cal OES. We have a really awesome briefing for you today, specifically on our Summer of Safety campaign. So let's get into the agenda and we'll get started. Overall, just want to really let all of you know that we have a suite of resources and materials for you to be able to use in your communities, at events, when it's needed. And so this is a variety of materials and resources that I think will be really perfect for Californians. We know that there is going to be extreme climate related emergencies in the coming months. So we want you to be ready and have what you need ahead of time. So we'll hear a little bit from the National Weather Service. Then we'll kind of jump into Cal OES a little bit and just what we're doing as a state to prepare and some of those resources. Then we'll get to the fun part, really seeing those materials and resources and just seeing how wonderful I think that they will be, especially in the coming months. And then we'll hear from trusted messengers on the ground, experiences specifically that they have lived and experienced during times of crisis, and how they have used materials like this in the past to really make a difference. And then it'll go over to questions and ensuring that we can answer any questions that you have. And that's really it. So I appreciate everyone joining us. Again, Deanna Crofts-Pelayo with Cal OES. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to David Lawrence with the National Weather Service. Just give us a little forecast of what we're seeing in the coming days and weeks, and maybe give us a little, if you can crystal ball what you see coming in the next months, perhaps.
Absolutely. I will do my best. Thanks so much, Deanna. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing us to be with you. It is summer officially, so we're going to start talking about heat. And in typical almost July fashion, we're going to kick things off in a hurry the next couple of days. The first thing I want to bring to everyone's attention is we are very likely to see our first widespread heat event so far this summer developing, especially Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Only maybe a 3 or 4 day stretch of heat this time. But nonetheless, some of these temperatures will reach well into the 100s, probably in the 105 to 110 degree range for many inland areas of the state, again, peaking Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And even areas near the coast, those just along the immediate shore, will luck out and not see warm temperatures with this. But just inland, even those coastal communities are likely to see temperatures well into the 90s, which is pretty significant for this time of the year when daytime temperatures typically average mostly in the 70s to lower 80s. So really want everyone to be prepared for this first stretch of heat, likely to not be the only one as we go through the summertime months. And you can see the map that I've included here. This is the forecast high temperatures for Saturdays, again, well into that 105 to 110 degree range. Some of the southern deserts likely to see 115 or higher, and Death Valley likely to push 120 degrees. So here we go. Time for things to really start rolling. Just a heads up, though, obviously this is a fairly big weekend with July 4th weekend coming up on Tuesday. We do expect to see a gradual cooling trend in temperatures for the first half of next week, and perhaps it will be brief, but perhaps a more significant cooling trend briefly for the latter half of next week. So this is not here to stay just yet. If I could have the next slide, please. I just want to give you a sort of the climate outlook, and I'll explain what we're looking at here. Let's start with the image on the right. This is the seasonal temperature outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. This is covering the combined months of July, August, and September. So the remainder of summer, if you will. And I want you to notice these are given in probabilities. We have a fairly significant probability, anywhere between 40 to 60% chance that temperatures will be above average across much of the state of California. I do want to mention this particular forecast is a little more tricky than what we typically see for some summertime months. The last several summers have just been outright hot. This one is a little more tricky, though, as we do expect to see some occasional blips, if you will, of cooler temperatures arriving across the state. The first one of those arrives here in the next couple of days after this brief stretch of heat. The reason for that, I won't get too technical, but we do have what we call El Nino developing in the Pacific Ocean, where those ocean temperatures are trending above normal. And climatologically speaking, those types of summers in California can be quite variable, where we see periods of very hot temperatures actually followed by some nice relief, much like we have seen so far this summer across the state. So likely to trend temperatures above average for the remainder of the summer. That doesn't mean in this case that we won't see some stretches of cooler conditions as well. Nonetheless, obviously a great idea to be prepared for stretches of heat. And when it comes to precipitation on the left side, this one is really almost, I hate to say this, but almost like throwing a dart at a dartboard and seeing where it lands. There is no strong signal for precipitation trends as we go into the season. During developing El Nino summers, we typically see the monsoon suppressed. And you can see that represented by the higher than average chances for below normal precipitation across Arizona. But when it comes to California, occasionally we will sneak some moisture in and develop some thunderstorms. But right now, it really is just too difficult to try to nail down whether we'll see above or below normal or even near normal precipitation for the summer. Of course, keep in mind the summertime is the driest time of the year across the state of California. That is all I have today. Again, thank you for the time. I will stick around and happy to take any questions you have at the end. Otherwise, I'll turn things back over. Thanks.
Thanks so much, David. Really appreciate your time. And what I'll also say too is David has been with us in and out of so many different emergencies and disasters that, you know, he's tried to give us that crystal ball outlook. And so we really appreciate his expertise here in particular. I also want to mention, and some of you have already taken advantage of it, is that we have answering any questions you may have also in the Q&A section of this Zoom. So want to ensure that you also can ask those questions there. I might hold some also to the end, but I'm trying to furiously type away at the same time. So with that, I think that we have one poll ready to go that we really love for you all to participate in. It basically says, what region of the state are you based in? We'd love to know. This is going to be so helpful for us to be able to curate content specifically to your region. So please enter in that poll right now. And with that, I think we can transfer it over. I hope everyone submitted their answers to Brian Ferguson, my boss, Deputy Director of Crisis Communications at Cal OES. He's going to give us a little update on kind of what the state's doing generally in the coming months, and first look at those resources too. Brian?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I just want to start by thanking all of you. So many of those folks who have gathered here at this call worked throughout the spring and winter months on flooding and protecting our communities. And, you know, do just want to say that all of this work that we do is in support of the work that each and every one of you do as frontline intermediaries, helping your community stay safe from disasters. And as we kind of head into this long holiday weekend of 4th of July, you know, we want to take the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about, you know, the state of play. David talked about the weather a second ago, and that how we as a state are preparing to help keep our communities safe for really, you know, several different hazards that could, you know, impact people and disproportionately impact vulnerable Californians. And that's really the backbone of the work that we're here to do, why we are so, we care so deeply about partnering with all of you at the local level, in our community-based organizations, our faith-based organizations, because ultimately it's about helping Californians stay safe from disasters. And we firmly believe that your chances of surviving a disaster should not be based on your zip code, the amount of money in your bank account, the language you speak. We want to provide resources that allow you to help those in your community understand the risks, stay safe, and if you do experience a disaster, recover from it quickly in a manner that helps you and your family, your community get back on your feet. So where are we now? David talked a little bit about it a second ago, but we have several sort of interrelated threats that we face. Californians are very familiar with wildfires. We've had that for about 5 years as something that we know happens seasonally, but then we also have new and other challenging risks that we face because of our warming climate. We have extreme weather. Just this weekend, we're already going to have many communities kind of up and down the backbone of the Central Valley and parts of Northern California that are going to experience extreme heat. And so we know that's a risk that impacts, largely folks who work outdoors, those who are unhoused, those who have, differently abled. And, and we want to make sure that we are supporting those communities. We also have risks when it gets hot of wildfires, which we talked about before, but we do anticipate this will be a busy wildfire season. It's not going to start early because we've had so much water, but the amount of water, rain, snowmelt that we face actually is going to make it a longer fire season and something that's going to push into the later parts of the fall and even the winter in some cases. So some of the biggest wildfires we've had in California, the Camp Fire happened around Thanksgiving. Happened around Halloween. The Thomas Fire, which at the time was the largest fire in state history in Ventura, happened like near Christmas. And so, we have a long road ahead of us in terms of helping people stay safe. But more immediately, the huge amount of water that has come down from the mountains through the record storms that we worked on earlier this winter and spring has actually made our waterways, our rivers, our reservoirs more deadly than they've been in close to a decade. We have just a huge amount of water that's running quickly. It's colder than it has been. And it's also moving in manners that we haven't seen in several years. And so what's something that we've seen, there's already been close to 20 fatalities on the waterways. And we want to make sure that we're working with all you to help educate the public about what those risks are. And then we at the state level are also kind of looking at the broader landscape of, as we head into the 4th of July holiday, how do we keep Californians safe? And so we have folks deployed out in the field, both at the local, state, and federal level, whether they be lifeguards at the parks and beaches, swift water rescue teams. So they're in place. So if people do get in trouble, we can do rapid rescues and getting people out of area. We have hoist aircraft that can quickly be deployed if we need to rescue people, or we also have a lot of hikers that will get trapped this time of year and put themselves in a risky position. But we know that the hardest thing to control is always human behavior. And so that's why we want to partner with all of you to kind of help the public understand the state of play and what this looks like. If we go to the next slide, please. So we talked about the risks already. And we have swift and dangerous water, extreme heat, wildfires. What comes with wildfire is wildfire smoke and power outages. And the chances are we're going to have several of these at one time. We're not just going to have extreme heat. We'll have extreme heat plus wildfires, or the wildfires may impact our power infrastructure. So perhaps we're going to have power outages or energy shortages. And these sort of interrelated, connected disasters is something that is a challenge, not just at the local level in terms of getting resources where it's needed, but at the state level, because a wildfire may happen in one community, but that smoke could impact other communities. If there's a wildfire in the Sierra Nevadas, it doesn't stay there. It could come down to the LA Basin, the San Francisco's we saw a few years ago, those famous pictures of so much smoke impacting the Golden Gate and Bay Bridge. And no matter where you live in California, you have a risk of one of these sort of crises. And the things we're talking about today really are aimed at helping people make repeatable, understandable plans to keep themselves and their families safe. It does not need to be complicated. Just a few simple moments, a conversation with your loved ones, and understanding what the risks are where you live and what steps you would take to stay safe. And through our program, through immense investment from our Governor Gavin Newsom, who's really leading the nation in Californians' efforts to protect our most vulnerable community members. He has put a lot of money in OES, CAL FIRE, invested like no place else in doing community outreach in a really unique and thoughtful way that's designed to keep communities safe. And so a couple of the simple steps that each of you can recognize and take over the coming days is helping folks get signed up for alerts. The simplest thing you can do to stay safe, or your family can do to stay safe, is to sign up for alerts from your county. We have a web page on our Listos website where you can do this. You can also go to calalerts.org to learn where you can sign up. Most people assume that the government will already have this, and in most cases, you actually will need to opt in with your county. Take a few short minutes, and that way, if a wildfire is bearing down on you, there's an extreme heat emergency, any of these crises, getting those alerts could be life-saving information for you. Making a plan. It doesn't need to be complicated. It could just be a yellow pad and paper and sitting down at the dinner table with your spouse, your loved one, your kids, your grandparents, and talking through what your plan would be. Pack a go bag. It doesn't need to be a complex plan. Have some just basic stuff in there, like vital documents, medications if you need them. There are many plans on the internet for how to make go bags, and having 5 days worth of food and all these things. It does not need to be that involved. A simple schedule of what you would grab if you needed to go quickly will allow you and your family to move out rapidly if you needed to be evacuated. Making a stay box. While there's some types of these disasters that, like a wildfire, where you would need to evacuate from your community, several of these are things where you'd actually be remaining within your home. So what would you need if the power were to be out for several days? Would you need, external charging devices, batteries, candles, things like that? Thinking through, in most cases, when we experience these types of disasters, you'll actually be at home. So what is the supplies that you need in a pinch if you were stuck in your home in a disaster? And fifth, and very importantly, in our community focus effort, is to help others. Who in your neighborhood, who in your community could be most at risk? Perhaps you have an elderly neighbor or a loved one who has durable medical equipment for breathing, or someone who relies on insulin for their diabetes. And so thinking through not just yourself, but your community members, so that you can help protect them and stay safe and have a community-based approach, because we know that together we can get these crises, and the more we help one another, the better off our entire state will be. So that's the high end. I'll stay on for questions after to kind of talk through the various risks. And if you have anything on the disaster landscape, we're happy to answer that as well. And with that, I'll throw it back over to our moderator, Deanna.
Thanks so much, Brian. Really appreciate your words. I'll also now hand it over to Alf LaMont, CEO of LaMont Digital. He's going to show us these resources live. So really excited about this. And we're already getting so many questions in the chat. So Alf, do you want to take it away for us?
Let's take it away. As you described, Deanna, the fun stuff, which sets a really low bar for what is fun. All right, let's get talking about this stuff. As part of our Summer of Safety campaign, we've developed a set of materials that will prepare our communities to keep safe from the 5 seasonal threats that Brian identified earlier. That's wildfires, wildfire smoke, power outages, cold and fast water, and the relatively new kid on the block, extreme heat. And we say that because this is our first rollout with extreme heat, and we're excited to show you some of that work. We have items to print out and hand out at community events, but we also have important stuff for you to post online, as well as activities and games for kids and family. And we'll have all of these materials available in English and Spanish, with other languages becoming available in the following weeks. So I'm going to walk you through some of the materials that we've put together and how you can use them. So right here, right now, what you're looking at is on the left, the Summer of Safety flyer. And this is a 2-sided sheet which has an overview of the 5 types of new threats that the summer weather can bring to Californians. As you can see, the front side here includes a QR code. That means it's not to be posted online, but it is to share in real life. The front side has a QR code that goes to Listos California Summer of Safety resources page. This sheet can be handed out as a flyer, hung up on a window, or community bulletin boards in storefronts as a poster. Again, don't post QR codes online because people are using their phones and they can't self QR. So the backside of this has also 3 helpful tips on what to do in each of the 5 possible emergencies, as you can see right there. If we can jump to slide 2, here we have the State Safe 1-page flyers. If you want to elaborate on the Summer of Safety tips, we have these 5 different one-sided flyers on each of the 5 summer disaster topics, including fast and cold water. So as you can see here, this is going in the details. It is the IRL click-through on our materials. And then if you want to go to a deeper level to help your community members really dig into what each of the threats brings and how to be ready before, during, and after specific emergencies, we have more potentially life-saving tips and guidance for some of these different scenarios. And these are packaged into the Listos California quick guides. So you will have access now to 4 trifold brochures for wildfire smoke, power outages, and extreme heat that can be printed front and back and handed out at tabling events or at door-to-door. So if we can get to the next slide, here we go. We have the activities for families. Many of the Listos California grantee partners have requested games and activities that can engage family members so adults and kids can talk about being prepared and what to expect. So here we have 2 different family-oriented resources to create good conversations around preparing for a wildfire smoke, extreme heat, and power outages. We have a 2-in-1 printout, which includes a puzzle for learning about extreme heat, wildfire, and power outages, as well as instructions on how to use some puzzle pieces to play a memory game. We also have a bookmark and a coloring sheet. The bookmark contains recommendations for picture books about natural disasters, and the coloring sheet is an activity guide for families to show them how to pack a go bag, as you can see right there, that big old go bag, and you put your stuff in it. Then if we go on to the next slide, oh, no, never mind, sorry, previous slide. I jumped ahead. We have here on the bottom right of this slide, we have a dangerous water sign. So this summer season, many of the rivers are flowing faster and harder and are colder than normal, which makes them more dangerous, of course, and even for strong and experienced swimmers. So these sheets can be printed out horizontally or vertically to create signs that you can put near potentially dangerous bodies of water. So it's a printout, and that's on the far right. All right, now if we move on to the digital resources, you can see here we have this whole slew of newly created images and art coming your way, all around the important summer of safety threats: wildfire smoke, extreme heat, fast water, and power outages. You can see that these elements in particular that we're going to be sharing online are a little bit more dynamic and more to the point than the ones that we may have used in the past. Some of them were getting wordy. And then this is thanks to your feedback and to the response on our social posts that allows us to learn as we go. So these new elements forgo visuals of wildfire and smoke to avoid triggering trauma response in our communities. They're powerful, eye-catching, but also thoughtful. Parents may also find a visual among these that was inspired by Frozen, again, in order to give visual cues that are comforting even in emergency situations. If we move on to the next slide, you can see here that extreme heat is also a focus here. Our first grouping of these images is focusing on some of the most vulnerable folks in our communities, and those are the folks who work outdoors. So as the summer progresses, the digital language around this will expand and will include more general tips, but we wanted to make sure we had strong, empowering visuals for folks who will almost certainly be working in extreme conditions. Along with our images here on the far right, you can see a preview of a work commissioned by Oakland artist Chloe Zara. And this is just a taste of some of the great things that are going to come our way over the next few months. Next slide, please. So as many of you know, video is a powerful tool that is currently in vogue on digital platforms. We have a variety of animations and videos that are at your disposal. So with many more on the way, by the way. I encourage you to keep an eye on the Listos California statewide channels for new content. Whatever we post will be added to the toolkit if it's not there already. If you have the capacity to do this on both the videos and on the static images, you have absolute permission to put your own brand and your own logo on these and make them your own so that you can be reaching out to the community in partnership. All right, next slide, we have our toolkit. So you can find all of these toolkits in English and or Spanish with more messaging, more videos, more art, and more languages still to come. So you can find that as well as our next slide, which is the Summer of Safety Materials and Resources Hub. And you can find all of these at listoscalifornia.org/summer, or you can go to the main website, listoscalifornia.org, and scroll down to where it says, make this a summer of safety, then click to learn for more. To get to the materials you talked about today, scroll down to get resources, which will take you to a page where you can filter the new materials we put together by language, topics, and formats. We will try to drop in here all of the links to the Summer of Safety, the toolkit, and all of the resources so that you have them handy, and I will make myself available to answer any of your questions. We are super eager for you guys to use these resources. Make sure you tag us and give us love, and remember that we are here to help you out. So please feel free to communicate to us anything that you might need via DMs. We'll be looking for your messages. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alf. While I still have you, actually, I know you answered the co-branding question, but still getting a lot of questions about co-branding, and just wanted to ensure that you reiterate how important it is to do the co-branding, and that, you know, other languages are going to be available soon.
Correct. So if you have the capacity to do so, you are totally welcome. There is space next to the Cal OES, the Listos Cal OES logo, that is specifically made for you to drop your logos on there. We suggest you do it next to those spaces, only because we don't want you crowding the message or the visuals. But feel free to do that at any time. And if you need some tools, I can also drop some links as to some free tools that you can use to add those to videos and static images. But yeah, and then of course, more languages coming up. Obviously, translation takes a moment, but eventually we hope to have as many languages as we can muster.
Thank you so much, Alf. Really appreciate it. I'm going to now hand it over to Alan. Oh, not yet, actually. We're going to do another poll. So it sounds like there were some regions that were left out by accident last time. On the first one. So maybe if you want to still put in your region, type it in this answer right here. But if not, if you already did that, just answer for us. Which summer threats are you most concerned about? It can be anything. Just let us know. We're wanting to kind of do a temperature check with you guys and see what you all are tracking in your own respective local communities. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to do that. And I'm also trying to answer as many questions as I can in the Q&A, and if not, we're going to save some for the end too when we bring back some of the panelists. Okay. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alan Lang. He's our Listos California Program Manager at Valley Vision, and he's going to open it up to really hear from our trusted messengers and all the great work that they're doing. Alan?
Thank you very much. And I want to thank Alf and both the LaMont Digital Word Circle Strategies team for coming up with all the materials. I love the variety that is there, the different tools that can be used both for family engagement, like with a coloring sheet, activity sheet, social media, videos. So all of that, hopefully it's useful for everybody that's on this call. And you all find different things that are in there that can really be beneficial for the audiences that you're serving through the populations that your organizations are serving. Want to get into our next section. So as we went through those materials so that now that you know what is available for the Summer of Safety package, what you might be able to use, wanted to team that by our next section where we have a panelist of existing Listos California grantees. And want to be able to hear from them and have you hear directly from them some of their experiences. What are some lessons learned they've had? What are best practices that they've implemented with their own strategies for reaching diverse and often at-risk communities? What practices that they've used? What's been successful for them? So just want to take a few minutes and hear from those who have been doing this work for nearly a year now out in the field. So hopefully you can share some of that knowledge and benefit from some of these experiences as you're thinking about in your own communities. How can you put this information and these materials to work? So with that as the opening, I'm going to start off by just having introductions from each one of our panelists. And I will let each of them introduce themselves. And Jacqueline, I'll go ahead and begin with you. And if you could just give a quick introduction of yourself, your organization, Project Camp, and why you thought becoming a Listos California grantee was important to you and how it's helping you serve the populations that you're targeting. So Jackie, start with you.
Thank you, Alan. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Nushi. I am the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for Project Camp. I have about 3 decades of emergency management under my belt, and 15 of those were in law enforcement. Let's see, Project Camp serves family and children during the response phase of a disaster. And what we do is we set up camps. So when you think of Project Camp, I want you to think of summer camp for kids in disaster. Why did we choose Listos? I've been with Listos now since the beginning of time. And you know, sharing the word of preparedness, I believe is the message of Listos. And we can do that with Project Camp through our children and our families. So Listos, from my background in emergency management and preparedness, is absolutely critical.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jackie. And George, let's go to you next. Introduction, yourself, your organization, the populations that you're serving at CORE.
Yeah, hi, my name is George Hernandez Mejia. I work for a community organized relief effort. And what CORE does is that we're a humanitarian crisis response organization. So we respond to crises throughout the world, everything from the war in Ukraine to the crisis in Sudan, and then locally here as well in California, from the flooding that happened earlier this January to wildfires that happened late last year as well. So for us, this kind of goes into like why we wanted to become a Listos grantee, because we want to be proactive and not just reactive, you know, and with climate being what it is nowadays, it's undeniable that a lot more places are going to be impacted, you know, so being able to have these honest conversations with communities, talk about what concerns them, how they would like to address it, is critical to do it now, sooner rather than later, as, you know, once a disaster happens, it's often already too late. And after responding to disasters just so many times throughout the last couple of years, it's really good just to like talk about these things before they happen and help people feel a little bit more prepared in case a crisis does happen. In terms of the populations we serve, we work with a lot of community-based organizations within LA County and throughout California as well, where take the YMCAs, for example, that may have youth programs as educating youth on disaster preparedness, or working with different community gardens throughout LA County, where they are often used as a place to supplement food. So these locations need to be protected from potential wildfires or hazards, stuff like that. So working with them on what that plan could look like. So that's kind of the general population that we work with. And really the biggest emphasis that we go for is listening to what the needs are, you know, go based off what people are telling us, not what we want to do. And that's how we develop our programming. And that's it. Yeah.
That is a great message. Thank you, George. Appreciate it. And Jamie, if you can get an introduction from you.
Hi, my name is Jamie Vang, and I work for a nonprofit in Fresno called the Asian Business Institute and Resource Center, ABRIC for short. And we provide technical assistance to farmers and small business owners throughout the Central Valley. And we do this by hosting educational workshops or helping them find funding opportunities through grants or through loans, and also connecting them to resources. So with Listos, we were able to get enough funding to host disaster relief training workshops for our farmers here in the Central Valley. And we conducted a farmers assessment, and 100% of these farmers, they have encountered natural disasters such as droughts, flooding, hail, you name it. And a lot of times, they don't have any plans ready. So with that, we decided to choose to apply for Listos because we wanted to provide these trainings and these knowledge, these resources to our population, which is mostly Southeast Asian farmers and small producer.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And moving to kind of into some of these questions, hopefully a benefit for all the CBOs that we have on the line, but wanting to get your experiences. What are some of those lessons learned that you can pass along to others? So George, I'll begin with you. Question is, what recent experience has your organization had helping with disaster response? And what are the lessons learned from that experience that you would like to share with the audience that's with us today?
Yeah, so I'd say probably around August of last year, there were wildfires in Siskiyou County, the McKinney fire and the Yeti fire, which were affecting the towns of Wairika and Happy Camp, if you're familiar with that area out there. We had a wildfire mitigation program happening in Siskiyou County at the same time those fires were happening. And when the fires started happening, we obviously wanted to mobilize to support the community because now there's a crisis at hand and we need to do something about it. We went in thinking that the need that the community would probably want the most is preparing their homes, like constructing defensible space around their homes, getting it ready in case a wildfire did happen to impacted areas. But once we started talking to the actual community members and listening to their concerns, what we found is that they wanted something different. And what they wanted was information. They wanted an understanding of what the wildfire maps meant, what the different evacuation zones were at, where their homes were in each evacuation zone, and whether they were under mandatory evacuation or yellow, which is just evacuation warning, or if they were just outside evacuation zones in general. So what we ended up doing instead is setting up shop at one of the gathering places in Happy Camp, which was the post office, where people could just come talk to us. We would talk to the incident management team that were managing the wildfire at large and get information from them. But we walk them through. I asked them like, all right, do you know where your address is? Let's find your evacuation zone. Let's get you signed up for Zone Haven, which is the emergency alert system. So they get alerts in the future as well. But we also understood that people needed a physical place to visit as well, because like internet and cell phone receptions can be very spotty up there as well. So just having that place where people could come in, ask questions, leave with a little bit more solid information so they could take action based on their own unique needs was invaluable, So with that being said, just like a huge lesson learned, and you hear me say it time and time again, that is, go in, have a plan, but be ready to pivot based off what you're listening and what the needs in the community are. And honestly, the whole information sharing and evacuation zone stuff really took our staff like maybe a total of 5 minutes to learn, and then we became ambassadors for it. So we're able to educate other people and comfort them too. So I'd say that was a big one, a good recent example of just how we help support in the wildfire response. And we did end up doing defensible space for homes that were at risk for wildfires afterwards, because people were more open to that now that they saw the immediate danger that it could provide. But you meet the need that the community wants most, and then any other stuff is a supplement to that as you're able to do it. That'd be my answer.
Excellent point. Don't necessarily assume or presume before you go in, but work with that community. Excellent advice. Thank you very much, George. And Jamie, I'll ask the same question of you. Recent experience that your organization has had helping with disaster response, and any lessons learned that you would like to share with the CBO audience that's with us today.
Yes. So our nonprofit, one of our programs that we also do is called a crop buyback distribution event. And during these events, we purchase produce from our local farmers and small producer, and then we pack it into a multi-variety box. And then we give those boxes to community organization or either to the general public to come pick up those boxes. And we noticed that a lot of these people that are coming to these events were either like they had limited English proficiency, or English, wasn't really their strongest language. So we felt that if we wanted to include any resources into these boxes, then it would be something that would have to be really like simple for them to understand, even though if they don't have a lot of English skills. So we decided to include the little small disaster ready cards. And on these cards, they have little things where they can put their little important details where they can put their names and their emergency contact and like their medical history or just like little medical important things. So in case like a disaster strike, they can pull out that card.
That's great. And a similar message, right? Of customizing what is the audience that you're reaching? What are they going to be able to use and using the right materials? So again, a great example, great advice. Thank you, Jamie. And Jackie, I'm going to go to you with the next question. So shifting gears a little bit, but you have been doing is, in your words, been involved with Listos California since the get-go, since it began. Love to hear from you. Is there anything that has really surprised you about the ways in which your target audiences have responded to the information that you've given and the outreach that you have engaged in?
Yeah, I have an example that really stands out in my head. And I'm going to go back in time a little bit to the Slater fire that was in Happy Camp. I had been doing multiple trainings out there because I felt that they were just absolutely poised for the next big fire. And sure enough, it happened. And afterwards, I was at the first local assistance center. And on my table, you know, there's a lot of resources for recovery and that sort of thing. But I also include my disaster guides. And some people aren't real comfortable with that. They feel like, you know, you might be making the survivor uncomfortable, but I feel like, you know, at that point in time, they are eyes wide open. They're ready to figure things out. So I had these disaster guides sitting on the table, and this lady walks up and she sees the disaster guide sitting there, and she has this huge gasp, which is to me like, oh no, this is the moment everyone said, don't take your disaster guide. She grabbed that disaster guide and she started, and I kid you not, running around that local assistance center yelling, you know, this disaster guide saved us. Listos saved us. And she's going up to people and saying, you need to go get this disaster guide. And it really threw me for a loop. I don't really get thrown very easily, but I really got thrown on that one. And then afterwards, I actually ran out of disaster guides and had to contact people and get them out to them. But even more people were coming up to me and saying, she's absolutely right. You know, you trained us. We remembered everything you told us. We followed our Bible. That's what they were calling it. And it allowed us to get out with what we needed, get our animals, our family out safely. And so, yeah, that was probably the most surprising, amazing response I've ever gotten from anyone from that.
That's good. Hopefully very rewarding to kind of have that response, but noting that's great to be able to get those materials out, make them available to all. And great story too of that person really becoming that ambassador. Once they had it, they experienced it, they used it.
Exactly.
And then really getting out further into communities that maybe weren't going to be reached otherwise. You don't know what her networks might be. So really happy to hear that story. Thank you, Jackie. Let me go to a question along that line about the resources. And George, I'll go back to you to start with this question. As you've looked at and Alf provided that great overview of the resources that are available for the Summer of Safety, any thoughts you have about the way that those are going to be able to be used by your organization out in the community, and then the audiences that you're reaching, how it might be beneficial for them?
Yeah, no, starting out with the wildfire smoke one, I think that one's invaluable. A lot of our programming takes place within LA County, which some areas are very susceptible to wildfire, but the majority of population lives within the city of LA. So while they might not be directly affected by a wildfire, they are indeed affected by the smoke and all that. And people don't necessarily make those connections on just what they could do. Like taking what's happening in Canada and using New York and Chicago as an example, right? Like all that smoke from those wildfires just coming down states hundreds of miles across and impacting these communities, informing people what you could do to be in better health for it, but also understanding where it's coming from and that these are real hazards that can happen in LA County and have happened in LA County is so valuable. So those pamphlets, not only the wildfire smoke one, but all of them are just like great, just like reading literature to pass out to anyone, whether it's a tabling event, whether you're doing a community event, no matter where you're at, we do a lot of just like, looking at what each CBO that we work with or group that we work with is vulnerable in their community. So just having these quick to read guides is a great way for them to just pick up something, be a little bit better informed, and probably even like give it to someone else, And I think like short, simple to read pamphlets and brochures like that too is just so helpful, especially when we do a lot of education with kids and they love those short, simple ones with like cool graphics and stuff like that. And that's especially in LA County when you're facing a lot of kind of first or second generation families. That's how you kind of get that natural flow of information into the family through the kids that might be the primary English speakers of the family themselves, So anything that we could give them to make like this information so they could be advocates for their family's behalf is so incredibly helpful as well, And just because it's something that we could print out in and have in paper, it also is something that we could pass on digitally to other partners and stuff so they could supply it to their own people as well. So yeah.
Thank you very much. That's great. And I'll ask one final question, and then we'll save the end of the meeting for any of those additional questions that have come in from the audience. But Jamie, if you can give kind of one walk away, what advice would you provide to the community-based organizations that are with us today about reaching the audiences that we're trying to serve and with information about emergency preparedness, response, and recovery?
Something that I want to do for all the CBOs to know is that we are all into this together. We have the same goal in mind. So with that, I think it's a good idea to really network with other grantees and also to learn with them. Like, so for example, when we went to that state training conference in Sacramento, it was a really good opportunity for us to network with other grantees, to see what they have been doing and to see how we can improve and how to make or impact more impactful. And I think so that's one thing that I would advise to other CBOs is to work together to make connections with other CBOs. Excellent.
I can't speak highly enough about the power of collaboration and working together. Thank you, Jamie. And then Jackie, I'll ask that same question to you to kind of close out our panel here. The advice that you would give to the CBOs that are with us today.
Well, I would say that, your audience, get down to their level. When you're asking a question in a training, go to them, be face-to-face, have that personal discussion where they feel, like you're listening and they're not worried about what everyone else is saying. Get yourself out from behind the table, move out into the crowd. People don't like to talk about preparedness because that means that's something bad. Let's make it something that's important. So ask them questions and then be quiet and let them answer them, because a lot of times those questions that you might ask might seem a little rough, but when you be quiet, you let them think and you let them recognize, oh, this is important. She's asking me these questions. And, challenge them. What evacuation routes do you know? Do you know your neighbors? How are you going to feel when you're driving off during that evacuation and you realize, uh-oh, I didn't get my neighbor prepared. Now I've got to stop, right? Are you going to stop? And then, other little things like how quickly can you grab what you need? Where are your medications? You put it in their realm, in their world to have them start realizing, from another direction as opposed to just, talking over the top of them. So, but most importantly, you got to get into their space. You got to get in next to them. You got to get out from behind those tables.
Outstanding. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all, Jackie, George, Jamie. Thank you. Thank your organizations for the great work that you're continuing to do out in the field. And again, hopefully there's some good, great pointers that you gave, hopefully some good lessons learned for those that are with us today. And again, really appreciate all the service that you've put into helping prepare our communities out in the field. So thank you much. And Diana, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Alan. And thank you so much to our partners for giving us real life experiences and examples to really help us, kind of rack our brains around the upcoming months and how we can help our communities. I do have a comment from an anonymous attendee that says, get out from behind those tables. Thank you for that. And all the other engagement comments. So really much appreciated. I'm going to remind folks, hey, put down any other questions you have in the Q&A area, trying to answer as many as I can. And then if not, shoot us an email. If there's something that, you think of a little bit later, just let us know. listos@caloes.ca.gov, and we'll get you in touch with the right information. With that, I do think that there's one last poll. So I'm seeing if we're going to bring that up. And if not, I might have the note wrong. Oh, okay, we're fixing things. Thank you so much for the feedback on the regions, adding a few little things there. So for those of you that missed out on that the first time around, and also we're adding a few more regions, so it's very inclusive of the entire state. Please feel free to answer that question. And then also, what was the most useful part of this briefing? We're always learning and growing and doing better. So let us know. We'd love to hear your comments and feedback. I think that have gotten some really nice comments too in the chat. So really appreciate everyone there. And also, hey, put it in the Q&A too, if that's easier as well, getting a lot of those as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to questions. And specifically, I am seeing so much information. So I'm going to ask for Mr. Ferguson to join us just for a little bit. We're getting questions again, the crystal ball and thinking about the future. Specifically a question is, what are you predicting for this year's fire season? And what do you think it's actually going to look like given, all of the weather? So specifically the question is the start of fire season.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And, we are already experiencing hundreds of wildfires every week here in California. I think we had about 227 initial start wildfires last week. This early part of the season, we are traditionally seeing what we call flashy fires or grass fires. So fires that spark quickly, move quickly, but they don't get into the heavier fuels or, forested areas. And so we will have more of those early this year because we've had so much water on the landscape. So we have more grasses and those things that have sprouted up. And then the bulk of wildfire season will be later this year. All these are generalizations, but it can vary depending on region or, the type of wind or red flag conditions we may have. But it will be later because it'll take the heavier fuels. So trees, chaparral, longer to dry out at the higher elevations, which is often where we see many of our fires. And so we do anticipate that there could be, significant fires well into the fall and even into the winter, depending on where it's at. So, and that will continue until it snows again next year. And we are seeing, perhaps additional rain in the forecast with an El Nino event on the horizon. So the short answer is a lot of it depends on Mother Nature, but we'll have more fires this year soon, and that the big fires will be later in the year. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Brian. While I have you still, getting a few questions specifically for, hey, we're thinking, do you have materials on perhaps, how to talk to people during evacuations? Are you going to do kind of more rural specific messaging? What is a good email for people to send us comments, suggestions for other topics for us to create more collaterals in the future?
So a couple different ways to interact with us. listos@caloes.ca.gov is one way. And if it's a communication specific question, you can send it to media@caloes.ca.gov. We'll also put these in the Q&A so you can see them. But we are here as a service provider for all Californians and are always on the lookout for partners who want to work with us. We view counties, local government officials, faith-based organizations, community organizations as our constituents here. And the work you do is vital. And so if there's ever a way we can partner with you or provide assistance, we stand ready to do that. And we'll put those links in the chat.
Thank you so much, Brian. With that, I'm going to take any other questions that I'm seeing in the chat. There was something specific on kind of some other types of resources that are available for folks. So I'm going to bring up Alf. I see you, Alf. Yes, hello. And specifically, there was also some creativity. There are a lot of brain, waves going on in the chat and questions for our ASL community and things like that. What are our hopes for the future with some of our, resources that are in language and also accessible?
Yeah, I think one of the important things that we also need to consider is that we will try to diversify as much as we can and try to reach as many people, but nobody knows how to reach folks better than you do in your own communities. And so we would encourage you to try your hand at creating your own stuff using our guidance and our messagings as how it relates specifically to your communities. That being said, we do have some stuff, some mountain stuff coming up. I saw that question among others. And like I said, this is just the beginning of summer. Expect more and expect a wide diversity of folks starting to chime in. That's all I can give away right now.
Thanks, Alf. And one last thing, people are trying to find specifically where the link to the social media toolkit is. I tried to answer as much as I can to go to our resource hub or our summer page, but do you want to give another little shout out or, send me the URL and I can try to answer to as many people as I can?
Sure. So I'm going to drop the URL here for you. But you can find the direct link to it by going to socialpresskit.com/summer-of-safety. And I know that that's the worst kind of link to give because
say it one more time so I can write it down at the same time.
socialpresskit.com/summer-of-safety. Dropped it right there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
For sure.
I'm gonna bring in Brian back on this a little bit. We're getting some questions on some of the innovative tactics. I think that, you did mention that there was a lot of, we're trying to put out these fires fast, right? And so Robert actually said, hey, we're seeing aircraft on top of smaller fires and try to keep them in check. What are you seeing for kind of some of those improvements on, response or all hazard response?
Yeah, the wildfire response in California has evolved rapidly, even just within the past 3 or 4 years. We've invested under Governor Newsom heavily in technology. So things like real-time aircraft that fly 24 hours a day that can map from the air. We're also using artificial intelligence to better understand how fires are going to move based on wind conditions. So we can put fire trucks, personnel in the place early to respond to fires. The best fire is the one that you catch early. So a huge amount of work goes into understanding where fires are at, using science and technology, whether it's satellites that are circling the earth every minute and getting that data, or we now have cameras. We're working with the University of California at San Diego, wildfire alert cameras that actually the public can check out too. And then aircraft and other technology to map it quickly so that every firefighter or the incident commanders in the palm of their hand can have that information to send resources and get to fires early. Early detection is critical. And we've also invested in our fleet of aircraft at the National Guard, at CAL FIRE, in local government. We at Cal OES have about 270 engines that we actually send out to local government partners. So folks who may not be able to afford an engine of their own, they sign up with Cal OES to be part of a mutual aid agreement. And all of this together is to go all in to be able to rapidly detect fires and put them out where they start through any means necessary, and ultimately keep as many people safe as possible.
Thank you so much, Brian. With that, I see it's the 4 o'clock hour and I want to give you, don't want to take too much more of your time, but I do want to encourage folks, go to our website, listoscalifornia.org. At the bottom of every page, you can sign up for our newsletter. It's the best way to get information. Even if you aren't a grantee with us, we want you to be a partner. So you can get information through our newsletters there. Again, listoscalifornia.org. I'm going to verbalize also our emails that Brian mentioned once again. Shoot us an email if you have questions about Listos California, listos@caloes.ca.gov. Or if you have any communications related questions to the work that Cal OES does here during emergencies, go to media@caloes.ca.gov. Again, you will receive this recording at the end of this presentation. We will also be sending you the PowerPoint. Y le doy muchas gracias a los que nos pudieron visitar aquí durante esta presentación también en español. So try to answer as many questions as I could, but we will stay tuned again. Thank you so much for your time.